All right, so this is we're just finishing up 2.4 today. So number 2, it said in the game of Monopoly, if a player lands on property owned by someone else, they must pay rent to the owner. The rent can be modeled by a linear function of the selling price. So Monopoly uses lines. It's amazing. All right, so Mediterranean Avenue, the selling price is $60 and its rent is $2. So when you're playing Monopoly, you buy it for the selling price amount. And then when someone lands on your property, remember they pay rent to you. All right, Vermont, the selling price is 100, the rent is 6, so you can see all those different things. So express the rent as a function of the selling price. All right, so you can check each of these points and you'll notice that they have the same slope. So we're just going to pick 2 points. So let's say we pick the first 2. Whenever it says express the rent as a function of something, so when it says as a function of, the of is the x value, the rent was the y value. So let's label our columns x and y. So I'm going to have 2 minus 60. Oh, what am I doing? Sorry, 2 minus 6 over 60 minus 100. Because those 2 points were 60, 2 and 100, 6. So change in y over change in x. Okay, when we do that, we get negative 4 over negative 40. So 1 over 10. Okay, that's our slope for our linear function. Remember, we can use either point to write the equation of the line. So we're going to use the point slope form. Remember, that's y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. It looks just like the slope function if you divide the x minus x1 over. It looks just like the slope equation. So I have y minus, use either point, so I'm going to use 60, 2. So y minus 2 equals 1 over 10 times x minus 60. Multiply the 1 over 10 in, so it's 1 over 10x minus 60 over 10, so 6. Add the 2 over, so you get y equals 1 over 10x. Negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4. So this will work for any of those properties. So B says, how much is the rent for Illinois Avenue? So that's not in our chart, with a selling price of $240. So selling price was our x value. So we're saying when x is equal to 240, what is y? So I just plug into that new equation I just found. So y equals 1/10 x minus 4. So it's 1/10 of 240 minus 4. So it's 24 minus 4. So it should be $20. Okay, that makes sense if you look at your chart. 240 is kind of right between here, and our rent fell right between there as well. So if those were points in a line, it would make sense. All right, it says, remember, parallel lines have the same slope, and perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes. Therefore, if you can find the slopes of one line, or the slope of one line, you can use it to find the equations of parallel and perpendicular lines. Do you guys remember all that? All right, so number 1, we're going to kind of practice this. So it says, write an equation for the line that passes through 3, negative 2, and is perpendicular to the line whose equation is y equals negative 5x plus 1. All right, so remember, the first thing you always need to find when you're finding the equation of a line, our 2 formulas are point-slope form, so we would need point and slope, or slope-intercept form. In this case, we have a point, but we don't have the slope. So whenever you don't have the slope, you always need to find it. So that's the first step you should always do. If you do not have the slope, you need to find it. So in this case, we know it's going to be perpendicular to the line y equals negative 5x plus 1. So we know that the slope of the original, so the slope here was negative 5. So when I talk about the perpendicular slope, that's going to be the opposite reciprocal. So flip it over. So instead of 5 over 1, it's 1 over 5. And opposite, so instead of negative, it's now positive. So it's 1/5. So that's our new m value. Okay, now we have through a point. So now I have my point and I have my slope. So I'm going to use point slope. So that's the y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And I just plug in. So it's y minus a negative 2 equals 1/5 times x minus 3. So y plus 2 equals 1/5 x minus 3/5. I'm going to add 2 or subtract 2 to the other side, so I get y equals 1/5 x minus 3/5. And when I'm subtracting 2, what's 2 as a fraction? So it has a common denominator with the other fraction. 10/5, right? So subtract out 10/5. So your final answer is y equals 1/5 x minus 13/5. Sometimes you might get some fractions. Yes, Karen. Yeah, I like to see it in the y equals mx plus b form in the end. It's just easier for me to grade if you guys all write it in the same form. And then with fractions, you can write decimals if they come out nice and even. Like 1/5 is 0.2, but a lot of times things won't come out nice and even. Like when you guys have 1/3, if you guys write 0.3, that drives me crazy because 1/3 is not 0.3. So you're making a major rounding error there. All right, number 2. So write an equation for the line that passes through -4, 8, and is parallel to the line whose equation is 2y equals x plus 10. So in this case, you can't see immediately what your slope is. So you actually have to manipulate the equation a bit to find the slope. So I have 2y equals x plus 10. I'm going to divide by 2 on both sides. So I get y equals 1/2 x plus 5. Now notice in the last example, I didn't use this plus 1 on the end of my equation at all. The only thing I worried about for that line that I was perpendicular to was the slope. I mean, if you think about it, there's lots of lines that would be perpendicular to one line. See how all of those would be perpendicular? So it doesn't matter where they cross the y-axis, you're just worried about the slope of those lines. All right, so I'm not worried about this plus 5 at all. So if you guys just want to kind of cross it out, that might help you as you're doing these problems. All you're worried about is the 1/2. We know we're parallel to this original line, so my slope is still 1/2. So same slope. So then I have that slope, and I go through the point -4, 8. So it's y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. M is 1/2. I have my x1, y1, so x1 is -4. y1 is 8. And then write it in that slope-intercept form in the end. So it's 1/2 x. This will end up being plus 4 here. So plus 4 times 1/2 is plus 2. Add the 8 over, so you get y equals 1/2 x plus 10 for your answer. And that's it.